Welcome to episode 34 of the Landlady Boss podcast. I am here with my sister and co-host Rachel. Hello, Rachel. How are you doing?
Great. Hi, Marie. How are you?
I'm doing well. As you can tell, I've been a little under the weather. A couple days ago, I didn't even have a voice, so I'm happy to be able to speak, but that's why I kind of have this deep, should I say, sexy voice today? A voice for radio is what I would call it.
I'd call it too much karaoke, too many
Maybe.
friends coming and hanging out.
I have had a lot of visitors in Nicaragua, which has been fun, but
Good.
definitely needed some downtime to rest. But I'm getting over this illness, and I'm happy to say I am out of the hardest part. So
The woods. Good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. Good.
Yes. How have you been doing?
Fine. I mean, it's January, right? And tomorrow is the last day of the month. And I got things that I've been trying, the last three people that won't give me their address or their EIN number. So I'm still trying to track them down so that I could send these out. So anyway, as soon as I have those last three, I'll be able to push submit and get my lines out. So that's good.
Have it done. I do think it's all a compilation. After Christmas hits, I mean, January typically there's colder weather spells that you're trying to deal with. You have all these documents coming due that you've got to get all your documents in line. And often there's a lot of empty. I think a lot of people either wait till after the holidays to move. Either they're moving out or moving in. And so I think we were talking about how it just feels heavy. I feel like January is a heavy month for landladies. And I think that's why we felt, for us particularly, doing an episode on avoiding landlady burnout.
Yes.
Because we feel it.
Oh, we do.
And I'm sure you are all feeling it. And so we want to do an episode talking about, like, we're here with you. We understand, and also some tips and actionable steps that can help you get through this little slump period, hopefully.
Yeah. So you tell me, Marie, what are some of the things that have just been your January burden?
Oh my, well, obviously weather.
Yes.
Although I'm in Nicaragua, I'm dealing with the weather in the Midwest, which is a doozy, just like you are dealing with in Idaho. And we had a
Frozen
cold
pipes.
spell there. Yep, negative 10, 15, 20 degrees. I mean, that's hard on houses and hard on furnaces and pipes. So, I mean, we definitely were trying to get snow removal lined up, especially with my commercial properties. That was kind of difficult because, you have them come clear the parking lot and shovel the sidewalks in the morning. Well, when it continues to snow throughout the day, people come back out in the afternoon or evening to leave to go home after work, and there's snow on the ground. So then, you have employees complaining to their office manager saying, hey, they didn't come. And it's like, yes, they did come.
3
but they
inches
have to wait
ago.
until, 3 inches ago. And now they have to come back after everyone leaves so they can actually clear when the cars are gone.
Right.
So it's just, it's a delicate balance, trying to please tenants and fight with the weather.
Totally. I have some owners that they're upset because it snowed less times this year. So trying to put them on a monthly maintenance agreement so we could pay the snow guy a set amount. They said, oh yeah, but it snowed less this year than last year. And so they want to pay less. And it's just not how it works because, of course, next year it's going to snow more. So that's the whole point of a schedule. And so
it's a budgeted amount that you do.
Yes. So he said
contractually with the snow removal.
Yeah.
Got it.
He said in the past, I usually come 21 times. So I'm going to charge you 21 times and spread that out, and then you got the landscape mows spread out. And so I was trying to get them so that they could count on their bills because my owners have been saying, we can never count on how much is coming out, right? So I got this whole thing, sent it to them, and they're like, well, I mean, it's already January and we didn't have that many snow removals for December. So we want less.
So now they're trying to kind of negotiate that.
Totally.
Whereas you go, it's a budgeted thing. Like utilities, they budget it and then it balances out in the end.
It does. It does. But so that's just like a funny thing. They're like, well, how much did we spend last year? And so it's just this whole thing about the goal is actually to be able to budget. But if you don't know if it's going to be a heavy or light winter, but everyone wants these budgets in a heavy winter and no one wants them in a light winter. And that's just,
Right.
Yeah.
I've had issues with bats. I had a house that the tenants thought that there were some bats in it, and we had our animal guy go out and he said, I don't see any evidence of bats, but if there are any, they're in hibernation and we can't get them out until spring. Because you can't really start digging into walls trying to find bats when they're hibernating. And so, the tenants were not satisfied with the answer. So, they called the health department and felt the health department needed to come out. And the health department came out and could not find any evidence of bats and said, we don't know what to tell you. There are no bats that we can see. Now, they do hear something in the walls, and there may be some. And so, we have to wait till spring.
It's hard
to get the bats out. But I mean, it's just things like this.
Right.
And I think people are cranky and tired and
yes,
gloomy with the weather and cold, and it's just
right.
makes for a hard.
And maybe they're getting along less too. So I have more tenants calling with problems with their neighbors making sounds and stomping or whatever. It's just everyone's irritable, and it comes back as they want you to fix that. And then it's heavy because you're taking in everyone's negativity and all the maintenance problems and all the emergencies and the lockouts and all of these things. And I, as a landlady, January is rough. I mean, it's just a hard month. And so we're here for you and with you, commiserating.
Exactly. We understand. But can we just say a big cheers? We almost made it through. So we're there. February's around the corner.
Yes, and we hope that it starts getting warmer for all of you also, so that'll be good. But yeah, so we understand, and I think that maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the signs, because if you don't know why you're kind of hating your tenants and your job and everything, and your maintenance people aren't fast enough, and I mean you just feel irritable, let's talk about what some symptoms are that maybe you have burnout.
Yes, some of these things may show. If you think you aren't in burnout, okay, wonderful.
Good.
But maybe you identify with some of these symptoms. So, feeling like giving up or selling everything, maybe don't make that decision right now.
Not in January.
Like if you're feeling that, not in January. Maybe make that decision in a beautiful June day.
June is a good
something. Yes, like when things are going well, make that decision, or are you neglecting, do you feel like, you're neglecting your personal life or relationships with your family or friends due to constantly dealing with management issues? Like that is so common. Like, you feel like you're just, it's heavy, right? Like you're just solving problems after problems, and
your car's a mess, and maybe you haven't put away laundry for a week. Like these are probably bigger signs that things are going on with you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, totally. Maybe a lack of patience or understanding. Normally maybe you feel a bigger connection to your tenants, but right now you're just like, I don't want to hear one more complaint. I do not have anything else to give. And I mean, that could definitely be a sign of burnout and fatigue that you may be experiencing.
Right. If your phone rings and when that ringer goes off, if you just find your whole body like tensing up and you're like, oh my gosh, whatever's on the other side of that phone, I don't even want to know. that
could be a sign.
That's a sign.
Yes. Yes. If any of these things resonate with you, or just like a feeling of, like you're saying, a text or phone call comes in and just maybe anxiety about it, or just dreading the next day, like what is the next day going to bring? Because that's not why we're doing this. Our goal is not to dread our days or our jobs. We're doing this for freedom and flexibility. And I think remembering our why is important, as we talked before. Like, why are you doing this? Why, focusing on that. It is to have more time with your family or friends, or more flexibility so you can travel, or focusing on those positive things, I think is going to be really important to combat this, and realizing that this is a very finite amount of time. Things are just a little heavy right now.
The snow will melt.
Get through it. The snow will melt.
The flood will get cleaned up. The pipes will get repaired. I had to do all those things this month. Yeah. I think these all are temporary, and it just often is a bunch of them at once, which is why it kind of tips that scale. But one thing you can do is change your ringtone. If that ringtone is representing to you the last flood and fire and tenant needs to get evicted, then change your ringtone. Like, give yourself a new one for the new year. That's like when it rings, it doesn't set you on edge anymore, because it doesn't have old memories of bad maintenance calls.
Oh,
that's one.
Make
one
new memories with a new sound.
It'll get you through January. That's all I got to say. Get you through January and February. Yeah. But that's one idea, right? I had a manager call me recently, and we were just talking about this actually today. And because she works from home with young children, she feels like she's working all the time. So because the phone will ring and you do a call, and then maybe you're like making lunch and then it rings again, and it feels so disruptive that it actually feels like you are working all day long, even if you're not, right?
Right.
Right. And so we talked about some ideas that would help her maybe handle that. And one of the ideas is that I created an Excel list and I showed it to her, and it has my daily tasks that I have to do. It has my monthly tasks that I have to do, and then my seasonal tasks. And then next to each one is days of the week, and it has a little drop down thing that says completed, not done, or due later. And so I said,
wow.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, sit down and clock in. Like if you take care of your time or whatever, clock in so you know kind of what time you're putting into this, and then go through this list, and it checks your emails, it checks your Zillows, it checks your Facebook, it checks your texts, it has all of the things that you need to do. And the nice thing about it is, because managing, there's so much that you could always be doing. You could always create a new ad for leasing. You could always put your time to create a new system, right? So it's nice to have a list that you can check off, and you just say, okay, now I'm done with this list. And then I have a second list that says, if you have additional time, this is create a new flyer, go through on the 6th, on the 12th, on the 21st, see who hasn't paid, remind them, all of these things you have. And then if you can click them off, you've actually done your solid core work for the day, and you can feel like you're done for that. Then you clock out, and then now you just have phone calls that come in and tours that maybe you set up earlier. So it just helps you be able to really get your work in a concentrated place and an amount, and then you're not going back and forth between putting the kids down and now you're working, and then now they're up, but you're like still need to get that email out. And so throughout that day, if you're working all the time throughout that day, it feels like 40 hours, even though it's 2. It's a hard thing to do. And so
Right.
that'll help the balancing act, I think.
So I love that you're being very deliberate about your schedule. You're taking control of it instead of that phone controlling you, because I know, especially a couple of years ago when I was just getting overwhelmed. I've talked about it before, just, doing too many of the jobs all on my own, and I needed help, but I didn't have control over that schedule. It was controlling me and the phone and the texting, and I was getting serious burnout. And so I had to make some changes. And one way to do that is to systemize things. If you find yourself burnt out because tasks just are so laborious, or you don't have streamlined systems to help identify those areas that are feeling heavy and find systems to improve them. And we do cover a lot of this in some of the courses we have, that you can systemize it to help, because it shouldn't be so heavy, right? Of course, there's correspondence you have to do. Yeah. There are maintenance requests, but like, as I mentioned before, months ago, the maintenance requests were feeling very heavy for me. It was laborious. It wasn't an easy system. I wasn't able to just take the maintenance requests and easily send them to the technicians or handymen. So finding a good maintenance request system was a game changer for me. The tenants have, the QR code, and they're just able to upload pictures, and I'm able to just text that on to the handyman. So that has been huge, because that was feeling very heavy for me. So identifying those heavy areas and systemizing them, I think, will be huge.
Right. And I think that's it, is like identifying what is it that is causing you to feel just like it's too much, and maybe looking at your 2024 income and your expenses. What are you netting as a property manager? And look at that and say, is there room, space to hire somebody to do X? Like, is it that you are tired of taking phone calls after 5 p.m.? Maybe you have trouble having boundaries. Well, there are phone services you can hire for, like 14 cents per unit or whatever it is, that you can hire, and they'll take the phone calls for you. And so just figuring out what it is that's causing that problem, and do you have money in your budget in order to maybe hire something, change something, or get a better software, something that will alleviate that.
Right. One area I was struggling with was I was dropping the ball. This was a couple years ago, on getting the inspections scheduled, actually getting in the units, because I was so busy with the managing part of it and filling the units and, handling the finances and handling the maintenance requests and everything. So those kind of details of getting those inspections done wasn't happening, which is not good because you want to make sure that you're in the units and seeing it, that you have eyes and ears in there. And so that was something, like you said, analyzing, okay, let's look at my budget, what I'm bringing in, all this stuff. And I was able to hire someone to come on to handle a lot of the tours and a lot of the inspections and all these things, and check with your state laws, because some state laws, in my state, she was required to be a licensed realtor to give tours or do anything like that. So
not mine.
You definitely want to check. You want to check with your state, because as soon as you have someone handling interactions with the tenants or applicants and giving tours and doing inspections, they may have to be licensed in your state. So just check that out.
No, that's really good. I usually send my manager to go and check the pre-winterization of the apartments, check the plumbing, just kind of do a whole inspection. And I was having trouble getting my manager free enough to go do it. So it kept getting pushed off and pushed off. And so I hired my maintenance guy, gave him the whole list. You know, it's a company that I'm actually using now as a third party instead of having a staff anymore, and it's working really well. But I gave him the whole list, had the manager give them the keys, and told everybody they're coming through, and they had this whole inspection to look for the smoke detectors and the plumbing and everything. And actually, they on the spot were able to fix a leak. They were able to, touch up a toilet that was running constantly, like tighten
I love that.
Yeah. And so it actually, I kept trying to push my manager to get time to do it, and she just didn't have it. So I figured out a way that now she wasn't stressed. It happened, and the cost gets passed on to the owner, but it ended up being a half hour on each owner. And so not a big deal, right?
Right.
So
and look at the disasters you possibly averted. From
it was,
so I mean, that's
it was great.
Worth it.
Yeah, you have to do it. But if it's not happening, figure out a way to make it happen. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So I think, our main point is finding those things that you're just not able to get to. I mean, you're only one person, identifying those trigger points, and then finding a way to solve it. And I like that your assistant was already too busy, so you found a third party to do it, and look at creative ways. Say, this handyman, maybe they aren't used to doing such and such, but maybe it's something they could do if they're free. So
it worked. It worked
those
really
are
well.
Great ideas. But I think a big part is scheduling relaxing downtime. You mentioned having boundaries, maybe turning off your phone in the evening, or not responding, or it's only emergency, because you do train the tenants how you want them to behave, right? Yes. I don't know how else to say that better, but you're training them. So if you respond at 9 p.m., they're going to say, okay, that's fine to call and text you at 9 p.m. Whereas if you have laid it out clearly, I communicate through this tenant portal, I will respond promptly. This is the number you use for emergency calls only. And after these hours, I will get back to you the next business day. Like, lay it out like that, and stick to them. Because if you are feeling like you're constantly working, or you don't have your evenings, or there's a problem with your boundaries.
Right. No, and I think that they have to know that you will get back to them within 24 hours. If they don't feel that, then you're going to have trouble with boundaries, because they're going to keep calling, because they feel like the only way they can get a hold of you is to be a squeaky wheel, right? But if they have confidence based on your past behavior of quickly returning calls or maintenance requests within 24 hours or anything like that, then they can calm that down and be willing to wait. And I think that's great. Having those boundaries is super important.
And I think it's a time to do automatic texts also. This is a time you can create and schedule those automatic responses, so you're not having to even try to respond. I will get to that. And you can do those automatic templated responses.
Right.
And so they know, okay, it's been addressed. They'll get back to me the next day. And then, like you say, follow up and make sure that you do. But
that's right.
Automating those things is really helpful.
Very helpful. No, I love that.
Well, and I think making sure that you realize there are seasons to property management that are just busier than other seasons, right? There's going to be that window of time where people are moving out and moving in. The summer is going to be busy for certain times, and typically the holidays are slower for move outs and moves in. So identifying that this is just, there is a busy season, but it doesn't last forever. But then identifying those times that you can take a break, and scheduling them, making sure, like, okay, I know that this time, say March or February or whatever, is just not as busy of a time. you typically have your leases end and renew in different windows. So make sure schedule those recharging times. Take a vacation, take a staycation, and just not have your phone and have, a backup person covering it. But making sure you take care of yourself and do self-care is important too, because you're only as good as you're caring for yourself.
And I did think about that this January, as I had so many leases renew, because of course they're annual leases. So everything I do today sets me up for another January next year that's bad, right? And so this year I took all my January leases and I put them on August 1st expiration dates.
Perfect.
And I know.
Yay.
I know. I did. Everyone signed. I'm like, you can sign a 7-month or you can sign a a year and a half lease, because
we did the same thing
I just
last
can't
year.
do
That
it.
is a huge thing to do. It's so important. I know we offered, whatever it was like, do you want 8 months or do you want 16 months or however it needed to work out for it to end? And you know what? People didn't mind at all. Some took the shorter, some took the longer. You may or may not agree with this, but it is huge for us to control when the leases end and start.
Right, because there's things like taxes that you can have no control over. They just happen. And there's things that you do have control over, which is when you have a lease end and start. I think that was a really big decision to maybe only have one bad January left in my life to fix it. So next January, I don't have 14 leases in December and January over the holidays.
No.
Yes, too many. Too many.
And people don't want to move in January anyways.
They don't. And so every tour, like normally in August and before August, like June, July, August, you're getting like maybe 5 tours and an application. But in the holidays, every tour you're hoping they sign, because they're just not coming as frequently. And so it is it's a hard time for everybody. So anyway, that's fixed. And so if you're signing leases right now in February, just remember that. And as you're signing leases, try to have them end and start September 1st, end in August, because this is going to be a new season for you that doesn't include all of this lease turnover. It's good.
That is a great hack. I will say, on the flip side, I have read on a forum about a landlord who actually preferred leases ending in January with the mindset, this is kind of funny, that no one wants to move in January, so he has greater retention.
Okay.
I thought that was an interesting mindset.
Okay, but people don't stay forever.
But at some point, you're still having January moves out. So I don't agree, but I just am presenting that is a different perspective. So I don't know, to each their own. Maybe leave a comment what you prefer, what you do. I'd love to hear back at how people do that. Do you prefer the January move outs for that reason, or do you try to avoid it? That's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one. And anyway, I'm all for warm times when you can go give tours and it's not freezing outside.
Yeah.
And you don't want them vacant. You don't want them vacant in between tenants moving in and out.
Exactly.
Because they're now sitting there and you're trying to go over and drip the pipes and you show it and they turn off the water. There's a reason why you do not want ever to have a vacant apartment in January.
Yeah, or February. Yeah, the winter months, you're paying heat, you're trying to keep it going. Yeah, you don't want to do that. But I will bring up the point that if you're feeling maybe isolated or alone, that's another reason people feel burnout. Maybe you don't feel like anyone understands. I mean, I know for me, when I was managing before I had my team and people helping me, I felt like no one really understood, or I would get questions, and I still do sometimes, but like, oh, do you even work? Which was always hilarious to me. Just people didn't understand because they see me like at the things, right, or around. So I obviously have a flexible schedule, but that's deliberate. But I'm just saying it could be very isolating being a property manager, because not a lot of people do it, or they don't necessarily understand what it all involves. And so if you're feeling maybe more alone or isolated, look out for different groups. We have a group we've just started, Landlady Boss group on Facebook, but there's so many forums and meetup groups, and look in your area for, real estate groups that maybe you can have some support, some community, especially as women. I think it helps so much to have people that you feel like get you. And even if you have girlfriends, I know that they don't always understand what your schedule looks like or what your day is like because they don't property manage. And so even though they love you and they're there for you, they don't necessarily understand that. So maybe try to find a good support group.
Right. I would say that there are so many great things about living overseas and being able to work remotely. But to be very, very honest, the hardest thing would be that if something goes wrong, I am up till 4 or 5 a.m. fixing problems. So I work a full
Right.
day and then I work a full day of the US hours, which means I sometimes am working 18-hour days because that is just what has to
Because of the
happen.
time change, because of the time difference. So it's the cost that comes from living abroad.
Right. And I guess if I were a property manager and there was a flood, I've done that too, where in the middle of the night, I'm running over and vacuuming up water. I mean, I think that being a property manager means that you have less 8 to 5 in your life, where you have less secure that this is exactly the hours you work and that you're done, and that people don't understand that. I mean, like, I'm just saying that there's so many great things about what we do, but the reason why we have burnout is because you're always problem solving. You are always trying to de-escalate. You're trying to be calm and professional when other people are not. You're trying to teach people how to communicate when they just don't know how to even have conversations with each other that are like hard to have, and you're teaching them how to have those. And then on top of that,
Yes.
you're hearing a problem from a tenant and you're thinking, is this serious enough to send somebody in? Do I send a plumber? Or do I send a handyman? Or do I ask them to flip the breaker? Do I ask them to try to plunge it? Like, you are constantly, problem solving. And so these kind of things are skill sets that are very unique to property managing and require so much of you. And so we understand, because that is what we do too. And these big companies that do a lot of the property management, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as you working out of your home and something goes wrong, or, and so that is why we do this. That is why we're here giving free podcasts and trying to explain what's going on, because not only is it lonely, but you are massively stretched intellectually.
Absolutely.
You become a bookkeeper now. You become a maintenance guru. You become like all of these hats that you wear, and so we get it because we're doing it, and it's a lot. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, not to be a Debbie Downer today, but there's so many pros, like you said, so many positive things about this lifestyle that I would choose it again and again.
Yes.
Not even for just the flexibility and freedom, but for long-term wealth building and retirement and, generational wealth, all these things, wonderful things. But anyone that says there's no work,
or they call it the silent income, or like everybody
passive. It's not passive.
Everybody talks about that. I know, and that's the part that we understand. There is no passivity in property management, because you're on call, and so I think that is literally why we created courses, because without these systems, I mean, you get burnt out, and then you decide to quit, and you hand it back to a company that cares less about it than you do, but at least you feel like you got your life back. But did you? Because the whole reason why you want to do it is for all of those reasons: for being able to care more about your property, for knowing what's going on, for picking the tenants in there, for being able to get income and be able to travel and still do a job in some other country. Like, this is why we do what we do, but it requires a skill set that isn't necessarily, we're not born with. So we want to help you have some of that. Right.
Well, and I think people would say, oh, passive income, just hand it off to a property management company. And as we've said before, if you can find a property management company that are going to be as good at caring for your property as you are, that are going to be affordable, that are going to be efficient, that aren't going to waste resources. I mean, all of these things, that's wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
Keep on that. But in my experience and in people I talk to and what I hear, that is not the normal experience. Usually a property management company has a lot of waste. They are not saving you money. But typically with a property management company, usually there is so much waste. It's a big business. They are not as concerned for your property as you are. They are taking a lot of your hard-earned income. So maybe your property is not even going to cash flow if you have to pay their fees. They're adding on additional fees. There are so many areas that make it hard to have a property management company. But if you have a great one, that's amazing, but usually it's not. And so self-managing is a way to protect your investment, to increase your revenue, to take care of your tenants and make sure that they're getting quality care and your properties also. So
yes,
that is why we do it. And so to just say, oh, make it passive, hand it off to a property management company, may sound great, but in reality, it's not necessarily a good option.
No, and that's where we come in to help you figure it out.
Yeah, so hopefully some of these steps are helpful for you, making sure that you systemize the things that feel heavy, making sure that you take time out for yourself, self-care, making sure that you are setting appropriate boundaries, and just realize that this too will pass. And if you can institute some of these things, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that things will get better, and January is just rough.
And I was thinking, we really could put that Google sheet I put together, the seasonal, weekly, and daily. We really could give that to our listeners. I've already created it. So that's something that maybe we can put on our website for you to have.
I could put in the show notes. I could put a link in the show notes, because if that would be helpful for people to lay out how to do the tasks and have it organized, that would be, I think, great. Yeah, I'll definitely put the link in the show notes. So
I think that'd be helpful. It works for me.
Yes, if you have any other questions or concerns that would be helpful for us to hear, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to leave a comment, subscribe, and share with other landladies that might find this useful, that maybe are experiencing the same things that we all are, and let them know they're not alone. So feel free to share this podcast with them, and feel free to email us at landladybosses@gmail.com. We also have courses and calculators and tenant check-in, check-out lists, and all sorts of things to try to help streamline things for you at landladyboss.com. And so hopefully these things will help you. And remember, nobody can manage your properties as well as you.